Hey, everybody, welcome to this podcast. I am thrilled today to introduce you to James Victore, the legendary James Victore. James, would you please take a moment and introduce yourself?
Howdy, I am James Victore. I am the author, designer, artist, and a big fat fake. True to form on our imposter syndrome subject today.
Okay, would you talk a little bit about how you got started or why you consider yourself a big fat fake?
Oh, um, how I got started is, quite frankly, I was born to do what I do for a living. I was born wildly creative, as we all are. We're all born wildly creative. We're all born with the gift of play and joy and fun. Um, um, and I was lucky enough and hardworking enough to hold on to it through my childhood, through grammar school and high school, which is very difficult to grow up and be, to get through that process and be weird.
Mhm.
Hold on to that. Um, I knew what I wanted to do at an early age, but I had to go and fail a couple of times first because that's kind of the process. Meaning, I went to university to study um, what was physics, and I got there and I realized I wasn't actually very good at math, and physics is all math. So I failed
Mhm.
out of that, and then I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York with literally like a stack of albums under my arm and a couple of dollars in my pocket. Um, and then when I got to the School of Visual Arts, I realized it wasn't really what I wanted,
Mm.
and I was asked to leave. So I was kind of asked to leave art school,
Wow.
um, and I started working basically 3 weeks after that. So I had no training whatsoever, and I just kind of I learned to design the same way that one would learn to swear. I kind of just picked it up on my journey. Um, I have no real training. I was lucky enough to start as a designer just before everybody was using computers, and I never really became super computer literate.
Mhm.
Um, I was much more interested in, I mean, what made me creative and why I got into this is because I liked making things with my hands. I liked scissors and I liked drawing and painting. Um, so, if I was going to follow my fears, which I try not to do, I learned years ago that I'm basically afraid of everything, and I just kind of don't let it stop me. I just
Wow.
I just keep on going, right?
Mhm.
I love more than I fear, right? Like a fireman is afraid of fire, but they love their job and they love helping people, so they move forward.
Right.
So I do feel the imposter syndrome. I do feel the fake and the fraud thing pretty much every day, but basically just don't let it stop me. Because I love what I do and I want to get paid to be James Victore. And as hubris as that sounds, I think that should be all of our goals. All of our goals is just to be ourselves, right?
Yeah.
The Danish philosopher Kierkegaard said the most common form of human despair is not being yourself.
Wow.
And I think that kind of encapsulates a lot of what I try to put into my writing, what I try to put into my teaching, and why I've graduated from being a commercial graphic designer into the kind of designer I am now, which I use design and art as the teaspoon of sugar to get bigger ideas across.
Ooh, I love that. Okay, so I'd really like to dig into imposter syndrome. So before we start, let me just give you the definition of imposter syndrome. If you're not familiar with what that is, Merriam-Webster defines it as a psychological condition that is characterized by persistent doubt concerning one's abilities or accomplishments, accompanied by the fear of being exposed as a fraud. I'm super guilty of this despite evidence of one's ongoing success. So many of us in our life feel like imposters, myself included, like I'm pretending to be a lesser version of myself. Was there a moment in your life that you can speak to where you intentionally made yourself small? And how did you overcome that and step into what you're doing right now, more of your full potential?
Yeah, I think the opportunities to make yourself small um, are 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 rampant if you want to get somewhere,
Mm,
if you want to continue your journey, if you want to grow.
mhm.
Right? There's this chrysalis at every single stage, as far as I'm concerned. I look at the Joseph Campbell's The Journey of the Hero,
I
right?
love that. Yeah.
It's what people use as a story arc, right? And it's the journey, and it starts at birth, and then you've got to kill your father, and you've got to go through this. But the process, I'm going to rewrite. I've redrawn his process, and the way I've redrawn it is I put in little notes along the way, and they all just say failure. Failure, 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 failure. You have to go through this. And one of the reasons why we suffer this syndrome is because we don't want to go through that process. We don't want to become new again and again and again, because it makes us confront ourselves. It makes us confront that feeling. And I think one of the biggest problems, and this is one of the things I wanted to say at the top, at the top of this conversation. One of the biggest problems with imposter syndrome is that we have those two words put together. We have that
Mm,
nomenclature. We have that description. And when we use that, people just go, "Oh yeah, no, yeah, I've got imposter syndrome," without investigating it, without being curious about it.
mm.
Adopted. It's so easy for us to do that, and it's wrong. And I think anybody who easily adopts that really should investigate it, because I think the real fraud on their part is not being themselves. That's
Ooh,
that's the fraud. That's the fakery.
that's true. And people always notice that anyway. When you're pretending, we all pick up on it.
Yeah.
Even though we think we're appearing one one way, everybody else notices the inauthenticity. Some people think that if they get a bunch of awards and, they're really successful, that that inner voice, that imposter syndrome is gonna go away. Does that work?
Imposter syndrome is just like any other fear, and fear never goes away.
Mhm.
Fear never goes away. Um, if it truly did, we would be uh, obnoxious. We would be complete bores, right?
Yeah.
It kind of serves a purpose and keeps us, humble. But fear never goes away. We get better. We get better at confronting with it and dealing with it. I experience it now in this conversation, or in the 3 minutes before we got on. I was just like, they obviously have the wrong person. They shouldn't be talking to me. They should be talking to some psychiatrist or somebody who has a degree.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember an art director pal of mine. Yeah, and this was when I was maybe my early 30s, and I had won a number of awards abroad
Mhm.
with my poster work, some of the Grand Prix at some of the big poster biennales. And he said, "Does that help you at all?" And I said, "It doesn't really help me at all,
Mhm.
but it shows me that my boldness is worth it. It shows me that struggle is worth it, and that I should probably, like, keep going, keep using that." It doesn't make it easier to send in work that I think is kind of risky. Um, um, but it helps me make that work, and it helps me be confident in it. And I think the process, what happens, because I have that confidence about my work, and because I send in things that I feel very strongly about, and that are risky, I think that's why they get accepted. I think that's why, basically, I don't get turned down a lot, which is crazy. And I
Wow.
look at it, I'm like, wow, they accepted that. Okay, let's go. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Okay,
But
so
I think the process is you get better at confronting the fear or the imposter syndrome, and you realize that the imposter syndrome, when you get that feeling, it's not this it's not this medical phenomenon, right?
Right.
It's just a feeling, and that feeling, we even call it imposter syndrome, but again, it's the wrong nomenclature. It's excitement,
Mm.
apprehension, it's
Mhm.
growth, it's
Mhm.
adventure, and we should listen to that call and not cower from it.
Wow.
Super important.
So that's really interesting. So you like, when you applied to awards or, put your work out there, it actually helped encourage you to keep going because people were seeing some of your value and your worth, and it was like an indicator that you're on the right track.
Yes, yes, and I also learned, it's taken me a long time to learn. That's why I can teach it now. I also learned that when it doesn't work,
Mhm.
that's not my audience.
Oh,
It's not
interesting.
about me. When it doesn't work, it's not about my audience. I've got a new advisor on my staff, on my board, and I complained like a whiner to her the other day that every time I send out a newsletter, like
Mhm.
I lose subscriptions. I sent out the sweetest Mother's Day newsletter and I
Uh-huh.
lost subscribers.
Oh, no.
She said, and she like just cool and calm said, let's scare some more off, shall we? Because imposter syndrome makes me go, what am I doing wrong? Oh, I should figure out what they want and I should cater to them. Like, no,
Mhm.
they're a bunch of looky loos who shouldn't be on the list.
Right. So, do you think, like, that's how you gain more confidence in when you actually have the ability to say, "Those aren't my people," and being able to stand in that and know who your audience is and isn't?
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that is the proper way to find your audience, is to, to literally settle into yourself, know who you are,
Mhm.
and the alternate process of that is know who you aren't and know who you are not for. There's a some work that it's in my book Effect Perfection, and also in a couple of other things that I've made, that says I am not for everybody, just the sexy people. Right?
I love that.
And it's just a way, it's a way for me to figure out, like, not everybody likes David Bowie, not everybody likes Prince, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Not everybody likes James Victore, and I have to be cool with that.
Right. I agree, I think that's so, so important. That's actually something I've been working on myself a lot lately, is, someone recommended to me a book called The Courage to Be Disliked, and I think that's really important.
That's awesome.
So another area of imposter syndrome, I think, where people can kind of get stuck or hung up a little bit is when they undergo a status shift. So let's say you've, been a graphic designer for a long time and you're moving into being an art director or creative director, and you might feel like, what am I doing here? How am I qualified to be able to do this new job? So if you're making that kind of transition, and you're feeling like an imposter as you're moving into a different position or a different status,
Mhm.
um, how would somebody deal with those feelings of, "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't belong here. I'm not capable," and have you ever had to overcome that in your career?
Sure, sure. I mean, even if I got a call or a text for a new job today, I mean,
Yes.
that's always the first, especially if it's a excuse me, if it's a client I haven't worked for before. I mean, that's the first reaction, is like, what do I got? What are they calling me for? I don't, what, huh? How could I possibly, right? Again,
Mhm.
that's the call. And if you are moving up in a job, or basically moving from a small pond to the next pond,
Right.
you have to understand that that's the process. That's the
Mhm.
process. The fact that you are being allowed into those waters means you belong in those waters. And here's the other thing: the reason we have that feeling, especially if it's in a social situation. Like, oh, I've got to go to this. I got to, back when I was in New York, I went to a lot of, the little private designer creative events with Baratunde Thurston and Brene Brown, and all the fancy pants. And going into those things, it was just like, okay, let's do this. Like, okay. But when you move into those circles, you have to understand this other thing. The reason why we're afraid is because we're concerned with what other people are going to think or say.
Mhm.
Guess what? They don't fucking care. First of all, they don't know you're scared.
Mhm.
They don't know you have that feeling in your stomach. You don't know that they don't have that feeling in their stomach,
Mm.
right?
Right.
They don't care and they don't know. So get in there and go and
I
just be human and just be authentic. And part of that is just be vulnerable, right?
mm.
Right?
Mhm.
And again, um, if you and I've got a 6 and an 8-year-old kid.
Mhm. Mhm.
I got to teach this all the time. If you do anything enough times, you're going to get good at it. You're going to get good at it. It's just practice. And I think what we can do is one of the tools that we can do for imposter syndrome is practice showing your work, practice getting your voice out into the world, practice sending sketches and talking about your process.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
helps. If you're awkward socially, and I know that I am, practice on the daily. Like when I go to the grocery store, I'm standing in line and you're kind of stuck there, right? You're stuck with all these people you don't know. I'm like, dude, force yourself. Just smile, look them in the eye and smile. Like this is a moment, James. Could be growth.
Oh,
This could be growth, but it's really good for you if you do that.
I love that. You are speaking my language. As a shy introvert, the social awkwardness issue is a big one for me.
Mm.
Doing things like this, though, like we're doing right now, are great
Yeah,
opportunities
yeah,
to get out there and practice.
yeah.
Um, One other area I want to talk to you about, speaking of vulnerability, is when we're moving into a position where we're growing and we're vulnerable and it's a little messy, how can you differentiate between constructive self criticism, where you're actually trying to get better,
Mm,
and detrimental imposter feelings?
yeah.
And can you give me at least three examples?
At least three examples.
Yes, please.
Um, um, Detrimental. I think that one of the reasons why I'm considered this source and considered a reputable name and considered um, uh, I don't even know the words, a good or great graphic designer, is that I'm super critical.
Oh.
I think one of the reasons is that I can see my work with a very critical eye and uh, try to before I even put pen to paper, try to get to a certain level, right? Like
Mhm.
get through, try to make the work that only I can make. You know, a lot of designers can basically come up with the answers that my mom can come up with, but
Right.
I'm the guy who comes up with my answers, right? Um, um, wait. What is the question?
Okay, I'll
Wait,
ask
wait,
let
wait.
me ask again. So, when you're being vulnerable and you're growing,
Yes.
let's start with the first part. Can you differentiate
Oh yeah.
between what you would consider constructive self-criticism and the opposite?
Yes. I know that my self-criticism is constructive. I also know when it's not. Meaning, um, before the book came out, it
Mhm,
was a series of post-it notes stuck to a wall for almost 2 years
mhm.
because the critic in me wouldn't allow me to go any further. The
Wow.
critic in me said, "You're not a. You're who do you think you are?
Mhm,
There's this process, James, you've got to go through, and you're not. You don't know how to do that, and you don't know the rules, and blah blah blah. Right? That
mhm,
when it stops you,
mhm,
that's the problem. It's okay to be critical about your work. If it stops you, or if it starts to ruin your life, quite frankly, and because I know for a fact, because I knew these people,
mhm.
I know them now. Many, especially designers, we kill ourselves. over the tiniest fucking little details that nobody else cares about.
It's true.
We stay up too late. We
Mhm,
miss time with our families. We stay at work. That causes stress. Stress causes disease or brings on bad habits like drinking, right?
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
there's an example of that kind of stuff. You need to be super conscious of, is this helping my work or is this stopping me from producing? We will stop ourselves from starting projects, or from showing our work,
mhm,
or from making changes in our lives because we're not ready.
mhm,
And we will not finish projects or ship projects or talk to new people or make new connections because we're not ready. Listen, we're never going to be ready. We're never going to be ready. I'm working on a new book, and like I keep getting this feeling of like, well, I should wait until level. I'm like, dude, just so I'm like trying to like carve out a new part of my morning routine to just sit and like for half an hour just like make notes. Even scheduling an organization will save your life, right? So
mhm,
I'm scheduling new time for me, and that's just James time. That's just like, how do I get past this imposter syndrome? I don't want to go through that process I did with the last book,
mhm,
you know? So if there's any process that's stopping us from moving forward, that one's got to go.
mhm,
But being critical about our work, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I sometimes send out work that I'm like that people love and that gets accepted and paid for. And I see it published and I'm like, I could have been a little bit more critical about that. you know? Um,
mhm.
um, but what that proves to me is that level of perfection that I'm searching for, it doesn't exist. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
So, do you feel like the ritual that you've developed around your process helps you, um, with the critical inner voice? And do you think that if that voice is really loud, it's probably something you really should do?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I had said scheduling an organization were a tool. I'm an action guy,
Mhm,
and the only thing that we are in charge of, the only thing we are in control of in our lives are our thoughts and our actions, right? And the way to get rid of those bad thoughts, those like I'm not good enough, self-worth, self-doubt, low self-esteem, imposter syndrome. The only way to get rid of those is to replace them
mm,
with good thoughts or replace them with actions. I know for a fact that like when this thing, that self-doubt, that self-worth,
mhm,
those limitations become too
mhm,
real for me,
mhm.
is James, go for a run. James,
Ah,
go for a walk. James, do something else. Don't do this.
mhm,
Change my body. Go to the gym and change all the chemicals. Replace all the chemicals in my body,
mhm,
or just replace those thoughts. And
mhm.
sometimes it's not my wife's job, but sometimes, and not sometimes, often she helps tremendously by reframing. Again, reframing, meaning it is not imposter syndrome, it's excitement, or
I
it,
love
or,
that.
it, or it's even apprehension. That's even better than imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome is just a fucking 2-inch thick steel door, right?
Yeah.
Apprehension is a screen door. You're like, nah, it's I could I get through that?
Mhm, mhm. I understand both feelings really well. Um, so okay,
Talking
so
to people here.
yeah, you're talking to your tribe. So if you're so you've reframed and you've worked through vulnerability and you've learned to create structure and organization to help overcome that critical inner voice, and you know that if the louder that voice is, the more important the project is most likely because you
Yeah,
have more resistance to it.
yeah.
So in your career, have there been advantages or benefits or positive results created from being a very authentic in business specifically? And can you give me an example?
Oh, yeah, completely, completely. Um, I first of all, so I wrote this book, Effect Perfection, and I have become the perfection guy, right?
Mhm.
Um, that has given me a lot of leeway professionally. People are like, oh, he's the tech perfection guy. That's why it looks that way, or that's why we they will give me what I want because they're like, oh, he's the tech perfection guy. So I've cut myself a nice big niche to work in, which is very groovy. But I think what happens when we are truly vulnerable and we
Mhm.
are truly authentic is what we're doing is we're creating a reputation for
Mm.
ourselves. What I do with my coaching clients is to get them to kind of like create their boundaries, because their boundaries and what they will do and what they won't do, that starts that starts developing their reputation, and they can live
Mm.
by that. I My reputation that I've allowed myself. I mean, that's the thing. I've just allowed myself a lot of creativity. That's why I want to work. I want to do creative jobs. I want to get paid to be the artist in the ointment. Um, um, that gives me a lot of freedom. Um, it also keeps me from that level of despair that I was saying, the Kierkegaard thing. Because when I'm not myself, that's when I fuck up. That's when I screw up. If I feel like I'm trying to do something that I think the client, I think this is what they want. I think, like when I start asking what anybody else wants, then I'm screwed because then I'm just guessing. I
Mhm.
don't know.
Mhm.
You know, I will, I will have the audacity to assume that they come to me because they want me, and that
Right.
gives me a lot of freedom. And yes, I admit that it does seem like the complete opposite of imposter syndrome or ego or hubris or something. But what it does for me is it just allows me to be me, and that's the easiest thing to do in the world. And I don't have to do a million sketches. I don't have to feel like I'm bending to fit into somebody else's thing. You know,
Mhm.
I'm not the kind of guy that you come to if you want to get trained to love cubicles and fluorescent lighting. That's not
Right.
me.
Mhm. Mhm. So, I really love what you just said about boundaries. I think a lot of people struggle with boundaries. A lot of people wanna say yes, and it's part of that desire to be liked and be included in groups or structures. Um, if someone was struggling with setting boundaries and understanding who they are and being able to be authentic, when you're coaching them, what would you tell them?
Um, Boundaries are self-respect. Boundaries are literally what you want and what you don't want.
Mhm.
Um, and it's not impossible to set boundaries. It's really hard to hold boundaries.
Mhm.
I'm telling people now, it's not as hard to make money as it is to keep money, and that's boundaries too. That's setting up personal boundaries, what you will and will not do with the funds that you earn. Um, um, but the boundary thing is extremely important, and communicating those to other people is
Mhm.
where we have the problem. Again,
Mhm.
it's always
Mhm.
other people, right? What does Oscar Wilde say? Hell is other people, right? But it's communicating those. So if you can teach someone how to communicate those boundaries, and I'm like, hey, communicate by any means necessary. Like if it's hard for me to talk to my wife, well, I will text,
Mhm.
right? Because it's just easier. If it's hard for me to communicate with somebody, I'll send them a note, or I'll send them, I will find other ways. But I also know that if it comes down to like there's a money conversation I have to have with a client, and I know for a fact that I need to get face to face on that, because if I don't, then I know that I'm being a coward, and I can't do that.
Right.
Again, when that feeling is really strong, like, ooh, I really shouldn't do that. Just write it out. Write out what you have to say. follow a script to, again, by any means necessary, figure it out. Boundaries are hard, but boundaries are super important. Um, I mean, even for the imposter syndrome, knowing those boundaries will help
Mhm.
tremendously. Like if you're going to go into a new situation in a new job, like
Mhm.
here's what I hated of the old job. Here's what I'm not going to bring. And if I
Right.
get to the new job and it's there,
Yeah.
I'm gone, right?
Right.
Or
Right.
or you teach people this is what boundaries are. Boundaries are. It's a guide how to deal with me. And when I get a new client, we literally send them a guide how to deal with me. Like, this is how I work. There's not going to be a million sketches. There's going to be one, and you're
Mhm.
going to love it, right? Um, two, I'm going to ask for more money. That's just how it works, right? It's just like, this is how to work with me. So we don't end up down the road like, oh, but wait a minute. But you thought that I thought that, um, it's, it's just common sense. And again, it's not about us. It's about us to other people. It's our attitude towards how we're going to be received. And for the most part, people will receive you well. And again, when you start setting those boundaries
Mhm.
and living by them, it just becomes easier because you've established a reputation.
Ooh, I just love that. I've got a question here from Devron, who's behind the scenes for us.
Do
Um, he is asking, how do we strike a balance between humility and recognizing our achievements? How do we present our achievements in an attractive way as opposed to a prideful way?
Oh, yeah, that's kind of like jumping off the bridge, though. I don't think that people are, if you're a dick, you're a dick, right? If you consistently come off in a prideful, boastful way, then you need to double check yourself before you double wreck yourself, right? Um, um, I think most people know where that boundary is. It's such a the little bit that I know Devron, it's such a funny question coming from him. Such a kind and generous gentleman.
Mhm.
Um, I often I don't struggle with that, but I think about that sometimes. Like, wow, do I just come off as like super like aggressive or super like, not needy, obviously, but um, um, personally, I can't worry about it because I know that I'm not. I know that my intentions are always good. My intentions are always for other people. And I think that would be one way for us to kind of judge that is what are your intentions here? Um, and again, with practice, you're going to find out how far you can, how boastful you can be. I think with that, if I suffer from that, I actually suffer from pulling it back way too much.
Mhm.
Pulling it back way too much and not going, hey, by the way, I'm kind of a big deal. I mean, I have friends who literally can say that when they're in a meeting or say that when they go into a party situation. Hey, I'm kind of a big deal. And I'm like,
Wow.
rub some of that off on me. That's kind of cool. If you can make that work in a humorous way, it's kind of cool.
Yeah. I actually had the thought the other day about some people can be really judgmental when they see someone in the spotlight or up on the stage and think, how is that person there? I should be there. But really, some people, it's the vehicle for their gift. They need to be on that stage. They need to be in front of people. Otherwise, you're robbing the world of an amazing experience. And I personally think part of it is being able to be humble and truthful with yourself and what you really need and what you're really called to do and being
Mhm.
okay with that. And I know you have something similar. You're right out in front in people's faces without any trepidation about who you are and why you do what you do. How did you get to a point where you were able to accept that in yourself and be as visible as you are and be willing to even write a book and coach and move into that space that you're in now?
If you practice anything, you get good at it. I remember the very first time I ever spoke, and it was shit. It was not good. Steve Heller asked me to speak a medium-sized event in New York, and it wasn't good, but I enjoyed it. Um, and okay, here's the thing. To go back to the first part of your question, or like
Mhm.
the lead up,
Mhm.
I believe, and it's the first line of the book. I believe that we are all born wildly creative. And I mean, everybody on the fucking planet is born wildly creative. Some of us just forgot. And for all of us, if we're not sharing that gift on a daily basis, we're doing something wrong. We're robbing ourselves and we're robbing other people of our gift. And we're moving into the Kierkegaard thing, the common form of, despair.
Mhm.
Um, for me, I've learned over the years that people respond to my work. People like my work. I should probably make it available to them. I should probably give it away freely. I should probably sell some of it. I could make it more impressive and move into museums and do that kind of work, right? So
Mhm.
I just learned through the process that works for me.
Mhm.
But I'm not special. It would work for everybody. It would work for anybody. I have a new coaching client whose work is phenomenal. She's so amazing, but she's in Berlin and she's been a colorist, picking colors for like tractor companies and car companies, but really she's a painter. And I'm like, can we build a business? Can I build a business for you? Because you are phenomenal. So what I
Yeah.
get to do now is help her build she has no social presence whatsoever. We can build it from scratch. It's such a great opportunity.
Mhm.
She doesn't want to go back into being selecting colors for those things. She wants to be an artist. And I'm like, let's go. And I'm going to slowly help her um, get comfortable showing her work in her way, get
Mhm.
comfortable being her own person and dealing with, the bank side of it. Like okay, you've got good work. How do you show it? How do you sell it? Let's go.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
because I think that we all deserve to be heard. When we all want to be seen and heard and loved. That's just human. We want
Mhm.
to be seen and heard and loved. And here's the thing: the imposter syndrome. Here's the thing. Here's a tool for you. So I've learned over the last couple of years from two of the most amazing spirits, the most amazing teachers, my kids. I have learned the born in, the inbred tool that all creatives need on a daily basis. And it goes like this: Daddy, look at me. Look what I did. They say that constantly. They say it so much that you want to fucking shut them down, right? And most parents do. Most
Mhm.
parents do because it's annoying. It's like, I can't look, I'm doing the dishes. I got important work to do here. Um, but that tool means they want to be seen and they want to be heard and they want to be appreciated. And we as creatives, we quite frankly, we like our work. We like what we can do, or at least the potential of what we can do. A lot of people take day jobs because they were born creative and they went to a creative school and they got a creative job, but they're only allowed to bring a teaspoon in at a time,
Mhm.
which is so frustrating. So I have to teach them to be able to say, hey, look at me. Look what I can do. Because they want to be seen, and they want to be heard, and they want to be paid for what they do.
I've heard a lot of people talk about they're okay with being creative, but once money comes into the picture, sometimes then that imposter syndrome becomes
Sure,
really big. Can you
sure,
talk about that in our last few minutes here before we
sure.
open it up?
Yeah, I mean, it is a conundrum, and it is one that I don't know if there's, especially in the world that we live in right now, because it is not a creative led world, and we are not in the most creative country right now,
Mhm.
right? Because
Mhm.
it comes from leadership, and we haven't had creative leadership in a while.
Mhm.
Um, um, but but creativity and money are like two different beasts. And if you want this one, you can't have that one. It seems to be that kind of pull. But the other part about it is how many steaks can you eat, right? How much do you need?
Mhm.
I want to get paid to be James Victore. That's important to me.
Mhm.
I want to even if I have a lean year or a
Mhm.
tough time, I want my children to see me
Mhm.
getting paid to do
Mhm.
what I love.
Right.
Right? That's important. Um, and it seems like again, there's another bridge to jump off. I want to get paid for my creativity, but I also want to buy a boat or whatever. You know what I mean? They want you want a lot of money because we see people doing this, especially now with the
Mhm.
the internet. Uh,
Mhm.
my Instagram feed is full of millionaires for some reason. I'm like, get off. I'm just using AI and it wrote me 3 best-selling books and blah blah. I'm like, fuck, shut the fuck up. Stop telling people that it's easy to be a millionaire. Why don't you tell them that? Why don't you teach them how to be themselves, right?
Mhm.
Teach them because that's the tool. That's the tool we need in order to get to those places.
Mhm.
Can't if at the anyway, if you do just search for money, that's all you're going to get, and you're not going to be satisfied because you're still not creative. You're still not doing what you want to do. Why don't we just focus on ourselves, focus on our creativity, and let that feed us? It's inside us, right? Let's make it fucking pay rent. Let's make it do its job.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Okay. So we are now at about 12:45. We've got 15 minutes for audience Q&A. If you haven't dropped questions yet in to the chat, please do so. And if you'd like to come up on stage, you can raise your hand. And True is going to be our police lady who is going to decide who comes up and who doesn't. So I'd just like to give everybody a couple minutes to ask any questions. And while we're waiting for those, one last thought on money. So there's a thing around money that I know I personally struggle with, which is this idea of value and um, creating art and seeing the value in it in a way that is paid puts it in a genre of business that sometimes I feel a lot of judgment from other people. Um, and I think part of the struggle is once something moves into being paid, it becomes really, really real, like
Sure.
crystallized real. And there's a commitment to what I'm doing that's on a whole different level because now to me, it's like more authentic. Like it's now I'm a real artist. Now I'm being paid. I'm not just playing with it. It's professional.
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that? Have you ever gone through something like that? Or do you know somebody?
No. No. Um, um, I do think that that feeling that you're talking about, and you admitted it, it comes from other people.
Hmm.
It comes from other. You said other people
Yeah.
feel, make you
Yeah.
feel. Those are not your people, obviously. You're hanging around in the wrong places,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Um, um, the people you should be around are the people who applaud, the,
Mm.
the people who help you, the people who say, um, "You got paid." I've got a printer. I've got a printer who's like, dude, you get paid $200 for a piece of paper. That's amazing." I'm like, yeah, because it's like people like put it in their kids' room. It's
Mhm.
important, right? We have to
Right.
understand the value of it, right? Like you said, um, I have not experienced that in my life. I've not experienced people saying, "Ooh, who do you think you are?" I have experienced that, like for some crowds, people want me to be an artist, and I have to talk like that. And for other crowds, designers are like, "No," but I've asked my fancy New York designer friends who like do amazing work, and I say, "So do you consider yourself an artist?" And they're like, "Oh, no, no, no." I'm like, "Wow, really? That's
Wow.
crazy. That's
Mhm.
crazy." Or ask my father. Built the house built the house we lived in. Amateur photographer, amateur chef, like amazing. If I asked him, he's now passed, but if I asked him if he was creative, he'd say, "Oh no, no,
Mhm,
no."
mhm.
But I'd say, "Hey, Dad, can you figure anything out?" He'd say, "Oh yeah, I can figure anything out."
Wow.
It's just again, how do we frame it in our heads? How
Right.
do we frame it in our heads, and how do we exclude other? The problem is our heads are filled with so many other voices that aren't ours, and we have to really distill what our voice is out of all those other voices and tell those other voices, shut the fuck up, you're not me, and replace those with positive action and positive words.
Ooh, that's really powerful, James. Thank you.
You bet.
I have a question here from True, the lovely True, and she says, "What role does mentorship or a support network play in overcoming imposter syndrome?"
Oh God, you need good people, and I was telling I'm telling Heather, find a new crowd, baby. Get rid of those. We all need, nobody does it alone. Nobody goes it alone. We need other people. Like I said earlier, I'm like, texting my wife, hey, here's what I'm feeling. Like, help me. Right? We need
Mhm.
we need positive people around us. We need a positive community. We need uh, we need feedback. I need feedback. I listen to feedback. If I put something out and people are like, well, James, I think you've stepped a boundary, I listen. I understand. I'm not indifferent to that. So yes, true. You are right. We do need, nobody goes it without good family. So let's create good family around us. And true, by the way, you are hired as the leader of the fan club. We'll talk about that. Thank you. Speaking
Uh,
of speaking of good community,
yeah, I
I like
agree.
I like your energy.
True has great energy. Um, you also have your own mentorship group, and you have groups that come together. I think in the summer you have boot
Oh yeah,
camps. Do you want to talk about that a little bit while we're on mentorship?
yeah. I have I guess three tiers of that. I have our weekly podcast, which is to a certain degree is a mentorship program because we have creative challenges and we have a Discord channel that we share with, and we have monthly meetings, Zoom, live Zoom meetings, plus the weekly podcast, and then the next level would be the coaching. Which is the private one-on-one, dealing, helping creative professionals get to the next level. We say we help people to get paid to do what they love, because that's kind of the game. And I mean I could go on and on about success stories. It's so amazing to work with these people who are like into it. And we're changing the format of that in January. So if you want in on the short term, do it now, because in January we're going for only for people who want to be in it for a year. So, and then yes, we have our workshops that we put up. Might be doing one in the spring.
How would people find the information for those?
Instagram,
Okay.
Instagram, and through here's something interesting. We were talking earlier about my work and these realizations and how I've changed.
Mhm.
Um, um, I've changed so much that my website is no longer or anything is no longer James Victore. Like it was jamesvictore.com forever. It is no longer James Victore because I realized that my work is no longer about me. It's about other people. So now my website is called yourworkisagift.com, because we're shit serious about, helping people get paid to do what they love.
I love that. I love it. Okay, it looks like we have a question from Devin, and I'm waiting for it right now. So as soon as I see this pop up, let's see. Oh, here it is. What is the best way to overcome imposter syndrome that was brought by an inciting incident? Ooh, that's good. Like an epic failure, for example.
Oh, the epic failure was an occurrence, was a circumstance, and it's over. It's over, and it wasn't you. It wasn't you. I'm sure it wasn't something you did intentionally. I'm sure it wasn't something you did out of malintent or cruelty or stupidity. It happened, and you have to walk away from it. It is not you. And dollars to donut that nobody else cares. Dollars to donuts, nobody else cares. We hang on to those. I mean, that's the thing. That's why we are different than um, all of the other mammals on the planet. We've got these stupid brains that hold on to these things. We hold on to those thoughts. You know, a, a gazelle gets chased away from the watering hole by a lion, runs off into the bushes, and shakes it off and exchanges all the chemicals and gets rid of all those bad chemicals. It's literally sweats it all off, then walks back to the watering hole and puts their head back in. Human beings are like, I got chased by a lion. Last week I got chased by a lion. 2 weeks ago I got chased by a lion. We like hold on to those things. Devron, don't hold on to that shit. It's over. It's over. You did something. Something happened. Even like trauma in our lives, we have to understand that it was an occurrence and it wasn't you, and you didn't bring it on. Move on. Move on, or find the words, replace those thoughts with positive ones, or replace them with positive actions.
I
Action,
really love it.
actions, so you will never go back into that situation. And if it involved other people and they were part and parcel, move away from those other people.
Yeah, I that's brilliant. I've had that many epic failures, many.
Me too.
And
I'm quite frankly, I am in one right now. I am in one right now.
you are?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Can't go into it, but I am in one right now, and it involves a number of other people, professional people who I feel they just quite frankly didn't have my back professionally, and I have to
Mhm,
move away from them. And I'm doing it with no bad blood and love in my heart, and moving on and trying to find people who will help me.
mhm.
Oops, it wasn't me.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of growing too. You're no one's perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I personally think the mistakes I've made in the past is to identify with that failure and then internalize it and then project it out and then have lots and lots and lots more failures.
Yeah.
And I think your advice to shake it off is one of the
Well,
best,
just
ideas out
yeah,
there.
but just know that you are not a failure. Shit happens.
Isn't that the definition of shame is the idea that there's something it's not the external event, but you're wrong, like, it's inside you. The failure is about, excuse me, you personally.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, imposter syndrome, same thing. Imposter syndrome, same thing. It's not that you are an impostor. You were given that. You were bequeathed that probably at an early age by a competitive family, or a family that values achievement. Um, um, uh, okay, my first book before Effect Perfection, my first book was called "Who Died and Made You Boss." Literally. You know why? Because I was raised in a strict military family, and when one of the kids stepped out of their pay grade, the command from above was, "Who died and made you boss?"
Mhm.
Stand down. It's like, wow. So my way of dealing with these things is to write about it, is to make it the book title, is to like, confront it head on.
I love that. We've got one more question here from Conrad. He says, when raising prices go, 2 times or go wild and jump at I think it says times 10 for more fun. Conrad, I don't fully understand your question. So you saying, um, we are you talking about when you raise your prices and having imposter syndrome when you raise prices? I think that's what you're getting at. Let's start there.
um, I say do it. I say do it. A litigation attorney, the way they win high returns for their clients is they ask for it. So, ask for it. Most people are like so afraid of asking for more money. They think they're just going to get like, they're going to lose the job. They're going to get hated. Then their family's going to leave them. And then they're going to end up eating, cat food and dying in a trailer. Right. It doesn't work like that. You may have to haggle.
Mhm.
So what?
Yeah. That confidence, and knowing that you have to ask for what you want, that's a big thing.
And it is a practice, and if you're new to it, you're going to go into a transition state, and all transition states are clumsy. You're going to win some of those fees, and you're not going to win some of those fees. Your client base might change. Um, Understand this: if you're going to raise your prices just for raising prices, your client base might change, and if it takes you away from doing super creative work, that's going to be a problem, because you're going to turn 30 or 40, and then you're going to call me. You're going to say, hey, I've got a summer house, and I've got the wife and the car and the kids and the this and the that, and why am I not happy? Creatively not, because you're creatively frustrated.
Guilty. Um, I think that's when you and I first, got in touch. Um, okay, so we have one more question here from Masha. She wanted to know if James works with a team or if you're solo.
Both. I do have a small team. Creatively, it's just me. Like as a writer and as a creator, as an artist, it's just me. But I have amazing sounding boards, and an amazing wife who knows me better than I know myself, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, great partners. It's a good thing.
I do, and we like I said, we just hired someone on the marketing business end, and it's proving super important.
Oh, marketing. It's a whole nother ball of wax.
Yeah,
Okay.
it sounds like you need to do a podcast on money, because that's really, I mean, really, that's like it is a concern. It is a concern. Creativity does not exist on itself. Creativity needs to be supported, and one of the ways to support it is financially. It's super important.
Agreed. Okay, we have a couple minutes left here, so I just want to see if we have any other questions
Sure.
that come up here. And then, James, I would love for you to talk about upcoming projects and books. I know we touched on the coaching at yourworkisagift.com, and you have a podcast called The Right Questions.
Like questions.
You're on Instagram at James Victore. They can obviously find you on LinkedIn. But you also were sharing you have a new book in the works, in addition to
Yeah,
the Fuck Perfection.
I have a new book. I'm trying to follow up Effect Perfection with and the struggle right now is to really make a new beast, and not just kind of rehash or like an addendum to it. Um, um, uh, I don't know how much I can talk about it right now, but so I'm working on a lot of pieces of on that, and we're always working on new courses and new ways to interact with our audience, because I love doing stuff like this. I'm
Oh.
I'm a people person. What do you want?
Well, I am super grateful for all of your content. I've been following you for a while, and it's really helpful and inspirational. I'm so grateful for you being here. True, Devron and I are so humbled that you would join us on our very first podcast as we're launching our new group.
Yeah.
And we are thrilled that you were joined us and answered these questions on imposter syndrome. I know that we are all struggling with it. Any closing thoughts, James, before we shut the room?
No, it's funny because I did have a closing, nah, nah, which is and actually Oprah wrote about this in her book. She has these amazing guests on her show, and authors and actors and people of accomplishment, right? And at the end, the closing of, they turn off the lights. They say, "Okay, cut." The first question out of every guest's mouth, guess what it was?
I have no idea.
They said, "Was that okay?"
Oh my God. Seriously?
Yes. Yes. And that's me walking off stage going, I go straight to the booth, not to the people who put on the thing, but the booth. And I say, hey guys, was that okay? And they're like, yeah, dude, that was, and I'm like, why do we do that?
Yeah. Why
Because
do we do that?
imposter syndrome.
The thing we've been talking about for the
We want
last
to be, we're
hour.
people
Yeah.
pleasers.
Oh, yeah, people pleasing. Yeah, that really dovetails right into the imposter syndrome.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, James.
You guys
Well,
are awesome. Thank you.
thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And stay tuned for more podcasts. And
Good.
we'll be posting some of the content from this conversation. So please follow James. Please engage with this content. And we'll see you all later.
Good job.
Thank
Got
you, James.
it.